I have hesitated to teach this truth because it sounds so simple that people might dismiss it as wishful thinking. But I have seen too many miraculous healings, divine interventions, and spiritual awakenings that began with someone randomly thinking of another soul. The divine communicates with us constantly through our thoughts and memories, and sudden awareness of distant people is one of God's most direct ways of enlisting us in divine service for souls we have loved across lifetimes. By understanding why people randomly appear in your thoughts, you will recognize and respond to divine communications that can bring healing to others, resolve unfinished spiritual business, and align you with your soul's purpose of serving God through loving other souls. Through decades of divine communion and observing the soul connections of thousands of devotees, I have learned to recognize the spiritual laws governing how God uses our thoughts to orchestrate healing, service, and spiritual growth between souls. If you have been confused about sudden thoughts of people from your past appearing without reason, if you're wondering if these mental appearances mean something or are just random brain activity, if you feel haunted by thoughts of people you cannot contact or do not want to contact, if you carry guilt about people you've lost touch with or hurt in past relationships, if you feel you're missing opportunities to help or heal others because you don't recognize divine guidance, if you feel disconnected from your spiritual purpose and divine communication, or if you're uncertain about whether to reach out to people who appear in your thoughts, this teaching will transform everything. These thoughts are not just nostalgia, not always signs you should reconnect romantically, not psychological projections, and not necessarily indications that the other person is thinking of you too. Unlike psychology that explains these experiences as memory associations or New Age thinking that makes everything about attraction, I will show you the ancient spiritual science of how God communicates through soul-to-soul awareness across time and space. You will transform from someone who dismisses these experiences as meaningless into a conscious participant in God's divine communication network, able to recognize and respond to sacred assignments that serve both your spiritual growth and the healing of other souls. Let me share 6 powerful stories that will reveal the different ways God uses our thoughts of distant souls to orchestrate miracles, beginning with a story that shows how divine love uses one soul's prayers to save another soul's life across thousands of miles. There was a woman named Radha who worked as a teacher in California. One morning, she woke up with overwhelming thoughts of her college roommate, Priya, whom she had not seen or spoken to in 20 years. These thoughts were not gentle memories, but urgent, almost desperate mental images of Priya that would not leave her consciousness, no matter how hard she tried to focus on her daily responsibilities. Throughout the day, Radha found herself unable to concentrate on anything else. During her morning classes, while teaching children mathematics, her mind kept returning to vivid memories of Priya. During lunch, instead of relaxing, she felt compelled to sit quietly and hold Priya in her thoughts with deep concern and love. By evening, the mental presence of her old friend was so strong that Radha felt as though Priya was actually in the room with her. Radha had no way to contact Priya. They had lost touch after college when Priya moved to India for an arranged marriage. Radha did not even know Priya's married name or location. But the urgency she felt about Priya was so intense that she decided to do the only thing she could, pray for her with all her heart. That night, Radha spent 2 hours in deep prayer for Priya, asking the Divine Mother to surround her old friend with protection, healing, and divine love. She prayed with the intensity of someone praying for a family member in immediate danger, though she had no idea why she felt such urgency. For 3 days, this pattern continued. Radha would wake up with Priya powerfully present in her consciousness, spend the day thinking of her with deep concern, and spend her evenings in intensive prayer for Priya's well-being and spiritual protection. On the 4th day, the intense thoughts suddenly stopped, leaving Radha with a deep sense of peace and the feeling that whatever crisis had existed was now resolved. 2 weeks later, through an extraordinary series of synchronicities, Radha received a message from a mutual friend who had reconnected with Priya. The friend told Radha that Priya had been going through the darkest period of her life. Her marriage had fallen apart, her health was failing, and she had been so depressed that she was seriously contemplating ending her life. But during the exact 3 days that Radha had been praying so intensively, Priya experienced what she described as a miraculous spiritual intervention. She felt surrounded by divine love and protection in a way she had never experienced before. The thoughts of suicide disappeared. replaced by renewed hope and faith in life's possibilities. She found the strength to seek help, began the process of healing her life, and ultimately emerged from this dark period as a strong and spiritually awakened woman. Years later, when the two women finally reconnected, Priya told Radha that during those dark days, she had repeatedly felt the presence of divine love reaching her through someone's prayers, and she had often thought of her old roommate Radha as a symbol of the pure love and friendship she needed to remember. Neither woman had any doubt that God had used Radha's prayers to save Priya's life across thousands of miles in 20 years of separation. This reveals God's use of prayer assignments through soul awareness, how the divine enlists souls who have loved each other to serve as channels of healing and protection when one soul is in desperate need. But God does not only use our thoughts of distant souls to assign prayer duties. Sometimes these divine communications come to orchestrate forgiveness and healing between souls who have been separated by pride, anger, or misunderstanding. Here we see how God orchestrates forgiveness through soul communication. There was a man named Anand whose father had died 5 years earlier, leaving behind a family divided by bitter conflict. Anand and his younger brother Ravi had not spoken since their father's funeral due to a terrible argument about their father's property and care during his final illness. Both brothers carried deep hurt and anger, each believing the other had been selfish and uncaring during their father's final months. For 5 years, both brothers lived in the same city but maintained complete separation. They would not attend family functions if the other was present. They communicated only through their mother when absolutely necessary, and both carried the heavy burden of a broken family relationship that wounded everyone involved. Then, suddenly, Anand began thinking about Ravi constantly. Not angry thoughts or resentful memories, but tender memories of their childhood together, their shared love for their parents, and the close brotherhood they had enjoyed before their father's death tore them apart. These thoughts appeared with increasing frequency and intensity, accompanied by a deep sadness about the years of separation and love that had been lost. At first, Anand resisted these thoughts, believing they were signs of weakness. His pride insisted that Ravi should be the one to apologize first, since Ravi had said the most hurtful things during their final argument. But the thoughts of his brother continued to grow stronger, accompanied by a persistent inner voice urging him to reach out with love rather than wait for his brother to make the first move. For weeks, Anand wrestled with his pride and his genuine love for his brother. The thoughts of Ravi became so constant and tender that Anand found himself crying during his morning meditations, feeling the deep soul connection that transcended their surface conflicts. Finally, Anand recognized these persistent thoughts as divine guidance calling him to heal the wounds that were poisoning both their lives. Despite his fear of rejection, he wrote a heartfelt letter to Ravi, acknowledging his own mistakes during their father's illness, expressing genuine love and appreciation for Ravi's good qualities, and asking for forgiveness for the cruel words he had spoken in anger. When Ravi received the letter, he began weeping immediately. He had been experiencing the same phenomenon, constant tender thoughts of Anand, memories of their childhood love, and a persistent inner urging to heal their relationship. He had been writing and rewriting his own letter to Anand for days, but had been too afraid to send it. The brothers met the next day and spent hours crying together, forgiving each other, and marveling at how God had simultaneously prepared both their hearts for reconciliation through the same divine process. Their reunion healed not only their own relationship, but restored peace and joy to their entire extended family. Their mother later told them that she had been praying daily for 5 years for God to heal her son's relationship, and she recognized the sudden appearance of loving thoughts in both their hearts as the answer to her desperate prayers. The divine love that wanted to heal this family had worked through the tender thoughts each brother received about the other. This shows divine protection working through soul connections, how God uses the invisible bonds of love to warn, protect, and guide souls who are dear to each other. Let me tell you about Maya, a mother living in New York whose adult son Arjun lived in Mumbai, working in the rapidly growing technology industry. Maya and Arjun spoke regularly by phone, and their relationship was loving and close despite the geographical distance. Arjun was successful in his career, financially stable, and seemed to have his life well in order. One Tuesday morning, Maya woke up with an overwhelming and inexplicable concern for Arjun. Throughout the day, she could not shake the feeling that he was facing some kind of important decision or potential danger. This was not her usual motherly worry, but something much more specific and urgent, a feeling that he needed her immediate spiritual protection and guidance. Maya tried calling Arjun, but it was the middle of the night in Mumbai, and she did not want to wake him with what might seem like irrational maternal anxiety. However, the feeling of urgency grew stronger throughout the day, accompanied by a clear inner guidance to call him immediately, regardless of the time difference. Finally, Maya overcame her hesitation and called Arjun at what was 3 a.m. his time. To her surprise, he answered immediately and said, "Ma, I was just thinking about you. I couldn't sleep because I have to make an important decision tomorrow, and I was wishing I could talk to you about it." Arjun explained that he had been offered a business partnership that seemed incredibly lucrative, but required him to invest his entire savings and take on significant debt. The opportunity had appeared suddenly, with pressure to commit immediately, and something about it had been troubling him, even though he could not identify any specific problems with the proposal. As Maya listened to the details of the business proposition, her mother's intuition immediately recognized several warning signs that Arjun's excitement about the potential profits had prevented him from seeing clearly. She helped him identify the risks, encouraged him to take more time for investigation, and suggested he seek advice from experienced business mentors before making such a major commitment. The next day, following his mother's guidance, Arjun delayed his decision and began conducting more thorough research into the business opportunity. Within a week, he discovered that the proposed partners had a history of fraud and that several investors had lost their life savings in similar schemes run by the same individuals. By following his mother's spiritually guided advice, Arjun avoided a financial disaster that would have destroyed his security and potentially ruined his entire future. He later told Maya that her perfectly timed call had saved him from the worst mistake of his life, and that he had been praying for guidance about the decision just moments before her call came through. Maya understood that divine love had used her maternal spiritual connection to Arjun to provide him with protection and wisdom at the exact moment when he most needed it. The urgent thoughts and feelings she experienced had been God's way of involving her in her son's spiritual protection across thousands of miles. God uses thoughts of others to assign us sacred service, divine assignments to use our resources, abilities, or influence to help souls who need exactly what we have to offer. I remember a successful businessman named Vikram, who had built a large construction company and accumulated significant wealth through decades of hard work and intelligent business decisions. Despite his material success, Vikram had always felt that something was missing from his life, a deeper sense of purpose and spiritual fulfillment that his professional achievements had not provided. One day, while reviewing financial reports in his office, Vikram found himself thinking intensely about his childhood friend Mohan, whom he had not seen in over 30 years. Mohan had been Vikram's closest friend during their school years, but they had lost touch when Vikram's family moved to the city for better educational opportunities, while Mohan remained in their small village. These thoughts of Mohan continued for several days, becoming more vivid and persistent. Vikram would find himself remembering their childhood adventures, their dreams of future success, and Mohan's exceptional intelligence and kindness. But along with these happy memories came a persistent feeling that Mohan needed help, and a strange conviction that Vikram should use his resources to somehow serve Mohan's family. At first, Vikram dismissed these feelings as guilt about his own good fortune, compared to friends who had remained in rural areas. But the thoughts and urges became so strong that he decided to investigate Mohan's current situation. Through mutual contacts and some determined searching, Vikram located Mohan's family in their original village. What he discovered moved him to tears. Mohan had become a dedicated school teacher, serving the children of their village with the same intelligence and kindness that Vikram remembered from their childhood. But Mohan's family was struggling with severe financial difficulties due to medical expenses for his wife's chronic illness. Despite his education and abilities, Mohan's teacher's salary was barely sufficient to cover his family's basic needs, and he had no resources for his wife's treatment or his children's higher education. Even more touching, Vikram learned that Mohan spoke often and fondly of his old friend Vikram, always expressing pride in Vikram's success, and often saying that he knew Vikram must be using his blessings to help others, because that had always been his nature. Vikram immediately understood that God had brought Mohan into his consciousness, because divine love wanted to use Vikram's resources to help a deserving family, while also providing Vikram with the sense of spiritual purpose he had been seeking. Without hesitation, Vikram arranged to pay for Mohan's wife's medical treatment, established education funds for Mohan's children, and created a foundation that improved educational facilities throughout their village. But the most beautiful part of this story is how this divine assignment transformed Vikram's entire life. Through reconnecting with Mohan and serving his family, Vikram rediscovered the spiritual values and sense of purpose that material success alone had not provided. He became actively involved in educational and medical charitable work and found the deep spiritual fulfillment that had been missing from his life. Mohan's family was lifted out of financial struggle. His wife received the treatment that restored her health, and his children received educational opportunities that enabled them to build successful careers while maintaining the values of service that their father had modeled. The entire village benefited from the educational improvements that Vikram's foundation provided. Both men recognized that God had used their childhood friendship and Vikram's business success to create blessings that served not only them personally, but their entire community. The random thoughts of an old friend had been divine guidance, orchestrating sacred service that fulfilled both souls' spiritual purposes. Sometimes thoughts guide us to souls we're meant to serve, identifying souls with whom we have spiritual contracts made before incarnation to help each other fulfill our divine purposes. Let me tell you about Kamala, a spiritual seeker who had been practicing meditation and studying sacred teachings for many years, but had always felt that something essential was missing from her understanding. She longed for a deeper connection to divine truth and practical guidance for applying spiritual principles in daily life. For months, Kamala found herself thinking repeatedly about Professor Sharma, an elderly philosophy teacher who had taught at her university 25 years earlier. Professor Sharma had been her favorite instructor, a man who combined vast intellectual knowledge with genuine spiritual wisdom and who had first introduced Kamala to serious spiritual study. These thoughts of Professor Sharma were not casual memories but intense longings to reconnect with him. Kamala would find herself wondering what wisdom he might share about her current spiritual questions, and she often felt that he had knowledge or guidance that she urgently needed to receive. After months of these persistent thoughts, Kamala decided to try to locate Professor Sharma. Through university alumni networks and considerable detective work, she discovered that he was living in a retirement community in a distant city and that he had been struggling with health problems that had left him somewhat isolated from former colleagues and students. When Kamala contacted Professor Sharma, she was amazed by his response. He told her that he had been thinking about her frequently in recent months, remembering her as one of his most spiritually hungry students, and feeling that he had important teachings to share with someone who would appreciate and apply them properly. During their reunion, Kamala discovered that Professor Sharma had spent his retirement years developing profound insights into practical spiritual living that he had been unable to share widely due to his physical limitations. He had been praying for a way to ensure that these insights would not die with him, but would be preserved and shared with souls who were ready to receive them. Kamala spent the final 3 years of Professor Sharma's life as his student, assistant, and spiritual companion. She helped him organize and record his teachings, provided him with the care and companionship that his advanced age required, and received the exact spiritual guidance that had been missing from her own understanding. When Professor Sharma passed peacefully at age 91, he expressed complete satisfaction that his life's spiritual work had found its perfect completion through Kamala's service. Kamala inherited not only his teachings, but his spiritual blessing and the deep sense of purpose that comes from fulfilling a sacred spiritual contract between souls. She now teaches and shares Professor Sharma's wisdom with spiritual seekers around the world, and she recognizes that the persistent thoughts of her old teacher had been divine guidance directing her to fulfill a spiritual agreement that both souls had made before incarnating, she to receive and preserve his teachings, he to complete his spiritual mission of serving humanity through wisdom. Now you're ready to understand the complete divine system that governs how God uses our thoughts of distant souls to orchestrate healing, service, and spiritual growth between all souls. The fundamental spiritual truth that most people do not understand is that souls remain connected across time and space through divine love in ways that transcend physical separation, death, and even conscious memory. When you have shared genuine love with another soul, whether as family, friends, romantic partners, teachers, or even brief but meaningful encounters, an invisible bond is created that never breaks and always serves both souls' spiritual evolution. These soul connections exist within what I call the divine communication network, an invisible web of spiritual awareness that connects every soul to every other soul through the heart of God. Just as modern technology allows instant communication across any distance, divine love allows instant soul-to-soul awareness that operates through the spiritual communication centers within our consciousness. The difference between ego-based memories and divine soul communication lies in their source, purpose, and effects. Ego-based memories arise from personal desires, fears, attachments, or psychological needs. They often create disturbance, obsession, or self-centered emotions. They serve the ego's agenda of getting something from others or avoiding uncomfortable truths about ourselves. Divine soul communications arise from God's love working through our spiritual connection to other souls. They create peace, clarity, and motivation to serve. They always align with love, healing, forgiveness, and spiritual growth. They serve the divine agenda of blessing, protecting, and awakening all souls involved. You can distinguish between these two types of mental activity by paying attention to their feeling tone and their effects on your consciousness. Divine communications feel loving, peaceful, and purposeful, even when they involve challenging situations. They inspire you to pray, serve, forgive, or act with love. They align with your highest spiritual understanding and motivate you toward greater compassion and wisdom. Certain people appear in consciousness at specific times because divine intelligence orchestrates these communications according to spiritual laws that serve the highest good of all souls involved. The timing is never random but always perfectly coordinated with both souls' spiritual development, life circumstances, and capacity to serve each other's growth. The heart chakra plays a crucial role in receiving soul-to-soul communications because it is the spiritual communication center that connects us to divine love and to the love that flows between souls. When someone appears in your thoughts through divine communication, you will often feel their presence in your heart center rather than just in your mental processes. Prayer and meditation increase sensitivity to divine thought guidance by quieting the ego mind's chatter and opening the spiritual faculties that receive divine communications. The more you develop your relationship with God through spiritual practice, the more clearly you can distinguish divine guidance from psychological noise. The universal spiritual law that governs all soul connections is that love creates eternal connection. Every soul you have truly loved, and every soul who has truly loved you, remains connected to you through divine love, regardless of physical circumstances, time, or apparent separation. Now let me teach you about the 5 distinct types of divine thought messages, each serving a different purpose in God's plan for healing and blessing all souls. Prayer assignments occur when God asks you to pray for someone in need, using your love connection to that soul as a channel for divine grace to reach them. These communications feel urgent, compassionate, and focused on the other soul's well-being. You may not know specifically what the person needs, but you feel compelled to surround them with loving prayer and spiritual protection. Prayer assignments often come during times when the other soul is facing crisis, illness, danger, or important decisions. Your prayers serve as spiritual reinforcement that helps them receive divine guidance, healing energy, or protection. Sometimes your prayers provide the exact spiritual support they need to overcome challenges or make wise choices. When you receive a prayer assignment, respond immediately with sincere, heartfelt prayer for that soul's highest good. Ask God to surround them with divine love, protection, healing, and guidance. Continue praying until you feel a sense of peace and completion about your spiritual service to them. Forgiveness opportunities come when God wants to heal wounds between souls by inspiring one or both parties to forgive, ask forgiveness, or restore love that has been damaged by conflict or separation. These communications often involve people with whom you have had difficulties, misunderstandings, or broken relationships. The thoughts that come with forgiveness opportunities feel tender rather than angry, sad rather than resentful. You find yourself remembering the love you shared with this person rather than focusing on the conflicts that separated you. You may feel moved to reach out with expressions of love, forgiveness, or reconciliation. Forgiveness opportunities serve both souls' spiritual evolution by releasing karmic burdens, healing emotional wounds, and restoring the flow of love between connected hearts. Even if external reconciliation is not possible or appropriate, the internal work of forgiveness benefits both souls spiritually. Warning guidance occurs when God uses your spiritual connection to someone to alert you that they need protection, advice, or intervention. This type of divine communication often feels like worry or concern, but it is accompanied by clear inner guidance about how to help or what action to take. Warning guidance demonstrates God's protective love for all souls by using the network of love connections to provide timely assistance, wise counsel, or spiritual protection when souls face danger or important decisions. When you receive warning guidance, act promptly but wisely. Contact the person if possible and share your concern in a loving, non-alarming way. Offer practical help, emotional support, or spiritual guidance as appropriate. Trust your intuition about how to communicate your concern effectively. Service calls are divine assignments to help souls in practical ways using your resources, abilities, influence, or connections. These communications come with clear inner guidance about specific ways you can serve another soul's physical, emotional, or spiritual needs. Service calls align you with your divine purpose of expressing God's love through practical action. They often reveal how your unique gifts, resources, or circumstances can perfectly meet another soul's needs in ways that serve both your spiritual development. When you receive a service call, respond generously and joyfully, recognizing that God is using you as an instrument of divine blessing. Offer whatever help is needed and appropriate, understanding that serving others is serving God. Soul recognition involves identifying souls with whom you have spiritual contracts made before incarnation to help each other fulfill divine purposes. These communications feel like deep familiarity, spiritual resonance, and recognition of shared spiritual mission or complementary gifts. Soul recognition often leads to spiritual partnerships, teaching relationships, or collaborative service that fulfills both souls' highest purposes. The connection serves not only the individuals involved, but the broader spiritual work they are meant to accomplish together. How to distinguish between these different types of divine communications requires developing sensitivity to their distinct feeling tones and purposes. Prayer assignments feel urgent and compassionate. Forgiveness opportunities feel tender and healing-focused. Warning guidance feels protective and action-oriented. Service calls feel generous and practically helpful. Soul recognition feels familiar and spiritually resonant. Why each type requires different responses relates to their different spiritual purposes. Prayer assignments require spiritual service through meditation and prayer. Forgiveness opportunities require emotional and spiritual healing work. Warning guidance requires protective action and wise communication. Service calls require practical assistance and resource sharing. Soul recognition requires openness to spiritual partnership and collaborative service. Now let me teach you how to recognize authentic divine communications and distinguish them from ego-based projections or psychological processes that can masquerade as spiritual guidance. The difference between random memories and divine soul messages lies in their source, persistence, and spiritual effects. Random memories arise from psychological associations, external triggers, or unconscious mental processes. They come and go without clear purpose and often create disturbance rather than peace. Divine soul messages arise from spiritual communication through your connection to other souls and to God. They persist with purposeful urgency until you respond appropriately. They create motivation to serve, heal, forgive, or act with love rather than to satisfy personal desires or emotional needs. Signs that thoughts are divinely inspired include persistence that continues despite attempts to dismiss them, urgency that feels like important spiritual business requiring attention, and peace that comes from responding with prayer or loving action. Divine communications also align with love, service, and spiritual growth, rather than personal gratification or ego satisfaction. Why divine communications often come with clear inner guidance for action is that God's purpose in bringing someone to your awareness is always to accomplish something positive through your response. Divine communications are not random information but specific assignments that serve both souls' spiritual development. The heart-centered feeling versus mind-based analysis in recognizing truth involves learning to distinguish between the peaceful certainty that comes from spiritual guidance and the mental arguments that come from ego. Analysis. Divine truth feels peaceful and motivating even when it involves challenging situations. Ego analysis creates confusion, resistance, or self-centered emotions. How divine messages align with love, service, and spiritual growth means that authentic divine communications always inspire you toward greater compassion, generosity, forgiveness, or spiritual development. They never motivate selfishness, resentment, or actions that would harm others. Warning signs of ego-based projections masquerading as divine guidance include thoughts that create obsession rather than peace, motivations that serve personal desires rather than spiritual purposes, urgencies that feel desperate rather than lovingly purposeful, and guidance that would harm, manipulate, or control others rather than serve their highest good. The sacred purpose behind each communication type serves the spiritual evolution and well-being of all souls involved while accomplishing God's broader purposes of healing, awakening, and blessing throughout creation. How prayer assignments serve both souls' spiritual development is that they provide the person in need with divine assistance through your loving prayers while developing your capacity for compassionate service and spiritual passionate sensitivity to others' needs. Why forgiveness opportunities heal karmic patterns across lifetimes is that they resolve spiritual debts, release accumulated resentments, and restore the flow of love between souls who may have been bound by conflict across multiple incarnations. How warning guidance demonstrates God's protective love for all souls shows that divine love actively works to protect, guide, and support all souls through the network of loving connections that link every soul to others who care about their well-being. Why service calls align us with our divine purpose of loving action is that they provide opportunities to express God's love through practical assistance while developing our capacity for generous, selfless service that serves the highest good. How soul recognition completes sacred contracts made before incarnation, fulfills agreements that souls make in the spiritual realm to help each other accomplish specific spiritual purposes, learn important lessons, or serve divine missions together. The way responding to these communications expands our spiritual capacity is that each time we respond to divine guidance with love, service, prayer, or forgiveness, we strengthen our ability to receive and act upon divine communications while developing greater spiritual sensitivity and compassionate wisdom. Now I'll teach you how to respond to these divine messages through a systematic approach that helps you recognize, discern, and respond appropriately to the various types of divine communications you receive. The first step is developing the ability to distinguish divine thoughts from random memories through daily spiritual practices that increase your sensitivity to divine communications while quieting the ego mind's chatter and emotional reactivity. Begin each day with a prayer asking God to help you recognize divine communications and respond appropriately to any spiritual assignments you may receive. Ask for the wisdom to distinguish between divine guidance and ego projections, and for the courage and love to serve however you may be called. Practice a technique for asking God to clarify the purpose of persistent thoughts about specific people. When someone appears repeatedly in your consciousness, enter prayer or meditation and ask, "Is this soul in need of my prayers? Am I being called to serve them in some practical way? Is there healing or forgiveness that needs to happen between us? What does divine love want me to do in response to this communication?" Use heart-center meditation for receiving guidance about appropriate responses to the thoughts and feelings you experience about distant souls. Place your attention in your heart chakra and breathe divine love into this area while holding the person gently in your awareness. Allow any guidance about appropriate response to arise naturally from this space of love. Ask yourself these essential questions when someone appears persistently in your thoughts. Is this person in need of spiritual support through my prayers? Am I being called to serve them through practical assistance or emotional support? Is there forgiveness or healing that needs to happen between us? What action would express the highest love for this soul and serve their greatest good? For the second step, learn the appropriate response actions for each type of divine communication you may receive, understanding that different types of spiritual messages require different forms of loving service. When you receive prayer assignments, respond with specific intercession techniques that focus divine love and healing energy toward the soul in need. Spend dedicated time in prayer, asking God to surround this person with divine protection, healing, guidance, and whatever blessings would serve their highest good. Continue your prayers until you feel a sense of peace and completion about your spiritual service. Pay attention to timing in prayer assignments. Sometimes you will feel urgency to pray immediately. Other times you may be guided to pray at specific times or for certain durations. Trust the inner guidance you receive about when and how to offer your prayer support. For forgiveness opportunities, discern carefully between internal healing work and external contact decisions. Sometimes divine guidance calls you to do internal forgiveness work without necessarily contacting the other person. Other times you may be guided to reach out with expressions of love, apology, or reconciliation. When considering external contact, ask yourself, would reaching out serve this person's highest good as well as my own spiritual growth? Can I communicate from a place of genuine love rather than ego need? Am I prepared to accept whatever response I receive with grace and love? For warning guidance, learn how to communicate concerns without creating unnecessary fear or alarm. Share your concern from a place of love and care rather than anxiety or control. Offer practical help, emotional support, or simply your availability to listen and assist however might be helpful. When providing guidance based on divine warnings, present information clearly but allow the other person complete freedom to make their own decisions. Your role is to share what you have received spiritually, not to control or manipulate their choices. For service calls, discern carefully what kind of help is truly needed rather than assuming you know what would be best. Ask the person directly how you might serve them most effectively, and be prepared to offer whatever help aligns with your abilities and resources. Approach service opportunities with generosity and joy, recognizing that God is using you as an instrument of blessing. Give freely but wisely, ensuring that your help empowers rather than creates dependency. For soul recognition experiences, consider approaches for reconnecting that honor both soul's spiritual development and life circumstances. Not all soul recognition experiences require extensive personal involvement, but all deserve acknowledgement and blessing. Be open to various forms of spiritual partnership that may develop, from brief but meaningful connections to long-term collaborations in spiritual service. Allow the relationship to unfold naturally according to divine timing and guidance. Know when to act immediately versus when to wait for further guidance by paying attention to the urgency and clarity of the divine communication you receive. Some divine messages require immediate response, others unfold over time as you receive additional guidance about appropriate action. The third step involves integration and ongoing awareness that helps you maintain openness to divine communications while developing wisdom and spiritual maturity in your responses. Practice daily gratitude for being included in God's communication network, recognizing that receiving divine communications is a privilege that reflects your spiritual development and God's trust in your ability to serve with love. Learn how to maintain openness to divine thought guidance without becoming obsessed with analyzing every thought or memory. Develop a balanced approach that remains spiritually sensitive while maintaining practical groundedness in your daily responsibilities. Create methods for tracking patterns in divine communications you receive. Notice whether certain types of communications come more frequently, whether you're more receptive at certain times or in certain states of consciousness, and how your responses affect your spiritual development. Keep a journal of divine communications and your responses to them. Record not only the communications you receive, but also the outcomes of your prayers, service, or other responses. This helps you recognize the effectiveness of your spiritual service and builds confidence in your ability to receive and respond to divine guidance. Develop trust in your ability to serve God through loving other souls by recognizing that every act of love, service, prayer, or forgiveness contributes to the spiritual healing and awakening of all creation. Your loving responses to divine communications serve not only the specific souls involved, but the broader spiritual evolution of humanity. Create lifestyle habits that support spiritual sensitivity and divine service. This includes regular prayer and meditation, maintaining a heart-centered approach to daily life, practicing forgiveness and gratitude consistently, and staying open to opportunities to serve others with love. My beloved friend, when someone you haven't thought about in years suddenly appears in your mind, you are witnessing the beautiful mystery of how God weaves all souls together in an invisible network of love and service. These are not random thoughts, but sacred communications inviting you to participate in divine healing, protection, and blessing for other souls. God has no hands but your hands, no voice but your voice, no prayers but your prayers. When divine love wants to reach a soul in need, it often works through the hearts and minds of those who love that soul. You are God's chosen messenger, selected because your love for this person makes you the perfect channel for divine grace. Every time someone appears in your thoughts unexpectedly, remember, God trusts you enough to enlist your prayers, your love, your service in blessing another soul. You are not random or unimportant. You are a vital part of God's plan for healing and loving this world. The divine communication network that connects all souls through love is one of the most beautiful and practical expressions of divine intelligence at work in creation. Through this network, no soul is ever truly alone. Every soul can serve every other soul, and divine love can reach any soul through the loving thoughts and prayers of those who care. When you understand that your thoughts of distant people are often divine assignments, you transform from a passive recipient of random mental activity into an active participant in God's plan for blessing and healing all creation. You become a conscious co-worker with divine love in serving the highest good of precious souls throughout the world. I recognize that every soul who appears in my thoughts is sent by divine love for a sacred purpose. I open my heart to receive God's communications through my awareness of other souls. I willingly serve as an instrument of divine healing, protection, and blessing for all who come into my consciousness. I trust that my thoughts, prayers, and loving actions serve God's perfect plan for the spiritual evolution of all souls. If you see this, it is not chance, it is God calling you. Do not treat these words as ordinary, for they are not a mere sequence of sentences drifting on the screen before your eyes. They are alive with the current of spirit, carrying within them the vibration of eternity, summoned at this precise moment because your soul was ready to hear them. How many things have you passed by today without a thought? Countless images, voices, and noises flooded your senses. Yet in this very instant, out of all the possible paths your eyes and ears could have chosen, you are here, listening. That is no accident. It is a divine appointment, arranged not by algorithms nor by random chance, but by the compassionate hand of God who weaves together circumstances to whisper to his child, "You are not forgotten. I am here." Perhaps you have wondered silently in your heart if the infinite has truly seen your pain. Perhaps you have prayed in the night with no answer but silence, asking, "Lord, if you hear me, give me a sign." And here it is, simple yet undeniable. This message, the very fact that your consciousness has paused here, that these words are pressing upon your soul, is the lightning bolt across the night sky of your doubts. It interrupts the monotony of daily thoughts, it shocks the heart into awareness, it rouses you from the sleep of disbelief. This is how God works, not always with thunder, not always with visions, but with subtle, intimate gestures that arrive with perfect timing, when the soul can no longer deny that something greater is reaching out. Think of lightning. The sky may appear endlessly dark, the clouds heavy, the silence oppressive. Yet in a single instant, the heavens split open, and light reveals everything: the contours of the land, the hidden rivers, the trees standing silent in the storm. So too, in your life, one flash of divine remembrance can reveal meaning where before there seemed only chaos, purpose where before there seemed only confusion, hope where before there seemed only despair. And that flash is this moment. God has broken through the cloud of your questioning to declare, "I am with you, and I have never left you." Beloved soul, take this into your heart. You are seen, noticed, guided. Do not dismiss this as coincidence. For coincidence is merely the name we give to divine patterns when we do not wish to admit the presence of God. What you are experiencing is the deliberate whisper of eternity. Let it shock you, let it stir you, let it awaken you. For from this moment onward, you can never again say that God has been silent, for his voice is speaking through this very encounter. Beloved one, let us now turn inward to the secret chamber of your heart, where perhaps for years there has been a cry rising that you could not silence nor fully understand. It is the cry that comes when you sit alone at night and feel that life has not given you the comfort you thought it would. When friendships seem shallow, when worldly successes taste strangely empty, When even pleasures that once delighted you now feel like fading echoes. It is the cry of loneliness, of uncertainty, of the soul itself, longing to know if there is one who truly listens, one who truly cares, one who has marked your steps since before you were born. How many times have you whispered into the darkness, God, do you see me? Do you hear me? Am I alone in this vast universe? And though the world around you was silent, your own soul could not stop asking, because the longing was too deep, too urgent, too real. This is why you look for signs. This is why human beings from every corner of the earth, from every culture and creed, lift their eyes toward the heavens, searching for some mark, some token that proves they are not abandoned. We crave reassurance that behind the veil of visible life, there is a hand guiding us, a voice calling us, a heart that loves us beyond measure. Signs are not demanded by the mind's curiosity alone, they are demanded by the ache of the soul. They are the natural language of a child reaching for its parent, asking to feel the embrace that it has always sensed but not always seen. And I tell you, beloved, this longing is not weakness. It is not proof of your doubt. It is the greatest evidence of your soul's divinity. For why would you hunger for God if you did not already belong to Him? Why would you seek a sign if some part of you did not already know that the sign giver exists? Hunger is the proof that food is real. Thirst is the proof that water exists. Longing for God is the proof that He is nearer to you than your breath. The tragedy of humanity is not that we long for signs, but that we often fail to recognize them when they come. For the signs are always arriving, always pressing in from the edges of life, like gentle knocks on the door of the heart. Understand this. When you cry out to God, that cry is not lost. It does not drift into an indifferent sky. It vibrates into the very fabric of creation, and God, hearing, answers. But He answers not always with the blinding flash we expect. Often He answers with a quiet unfolding, a person who says just the words you needed, a page in a book that suddenly speaks to your condition, a moment of beauty in nature that pierces you with inexplicable peace. And sometimes He answers by bringing you to a message like this, at the very moment when you are ready to receive it. Therefore, never despise the ache you feel inside. Never despise the vulnerability that makes you search for signs. For it is the homing call of the soul, the thread that ties you to your source. It is the inner compass pointing always toward God. And the sign you seek now is not to prove His existence, but to awaken your memory of Him. You already belong to Him, and He already belongs to you. The hunger is the beginning of remembrance, and the remembrance is the beginning of return. Beloved soul, now let me reveal to you the truth that dissolves fear and banishes doubt, like the rising sun scatters the mist. You are already in communion with God. You may think that signs are sent to bridge a gap between you and the infinite, as if He were distant and you were abandoned. But that is not the reality. The signs are not the beginning of your connection, they are the reminders of a bond that has never been broken. Just as the ocean does not cease to exist when the wave forgets its origin, so your union with God has never been severed, though you have wandered in forgetfulness. The sign you see now, this very message before your eyes, is not proof that connection has been newly created, but that remembrance is being awakened. Think of a radio broadcasting music into the air at all times. The waves of sound are constant, surrounding you night and day, yet unless you have tuned the receiver correctly, you hear only static. The music is not absent, it is present, filling the space invisibly, waiting for your ear to align with it. So it is with God. His love, His guidance, His voice are always streaming into your soul. Every breath carries His presence, every heartbeat resounds with His rhythm. But the restless mind, the turbulent desires, the doubts of ego act like misaligned dials, and so you hear noise instead of song. Yet when you still yourself, when you align through prayer, meditation, and devotion, suddenly the signal comes clear, and you realize the music was playing all along. Scriptures from every age echo this truth. Christ declared, "The kingdom of God is within you, not somewhere far above the clouds, but within the very core of your being." Krishna assured Arjuna in the Gita, "I am the self in the heart of all beings." Do you see? Across time, across traditions, the message is the same. God is not apart from you. He is the essence of you. You have never walked a step without Him, never breathed a breath apart from His sustaining spirit. The signs you long for are only the gentle taps reminding you to turn inward, to awaken to the truth that He has always been here. So let your heart rest now. Let the anxiety that perhaps you were forgotten dissolve. You are remembered eternally because you were never separated. The cord between soul and spirit cannot be broken by death, by ignorance, nor by time. It is eternal, woven into your very being. Signs are not to convince you of something new, but to peel away the amnesia of Maya and show you again the face of your beloved that has been with you since the beginning. And once you know this, once you feel the vibration of His nearness, you will no longer chase desperately for outer proofs. You will see His signal everywhere in the whisper of wind, in the glance of a friend, in the stillness of your own heart, for you will know that all is His communication and all is His presence. Beloved one, if God's voice is always speaking and His signs are always reaching us, why then do so many walk through life blind and deaf to them? Why do we cry for guidance, yet feel abandoned, asking again and again, Lord, show me something, while the signs surround us like stars unseen in the daylight? The answer lies in Maya, the vast, shimmering illusion that covers our vision, like a mist that makes us confuse shadows for substance and noise for music. Maya is not simply an external veil. It is the restless condition of the mind and senses that churns so constantly that the delicate whispers of spirit are drowned out. Imagine trying to see your reflection in a pond stirred by strong winds. The surface is broken, rippled, scattered, and the image is lost. Only when the waters are stilled does the face appear clearly. So too, the soul cannot perceive the subtle movements of God while tossed in restlessness, while enslaved to ceaseless thoughts and desires. Think of how a child writes a message in the sand near the tide. At first, the letters are clear, spelling out the secret for anyone to read. But before long, the waves creep up the shore, sweeping over the words, erasing them until nothing remains. This is how God often sends His signs, clear, simple, personal, and yet our distractions, our anxieties, our endless mental noise wash over them until we forget they were ever written. We mistake the erasure for absence, not realizing that the writing was there and that we simply did not protect it with stillness. The signs of God require the attentive heart, the calm gaze, the quieted mind. Without these, His handwriting is lost to us again and again. Have you not felt the frustration of asking earnestly for direction, for a token from heaven, only to feel that silence is the only reply? How many times have you prayed, God, show me, and then gone about your day with a heart so restless, with senses so preoccupied, that you could not have noticed the answer, even if it brushed against your very cheek? The sign was given, but you were too entangled in the roar of the world to hear the whisper of eternity. Maya is clever. It convinces you that only dramatic voices from the clouds would count as divine communication, while all the while God is speaking through subtlety, through synchronicity, through intuition, through the quiet opening of doors at the exact moment you needed them. But hear me clearly. The silence you experience is not God withholding Himself. It is the noise of Maya drowning Him out. The divine is always signaling, as the sun always shines even when clouds hide it. It is your task not to create the sun, but to remove the clouds. When your mind is agitated, when your desires are turbulent, when your fears clamor for attention, they act as thick veils over your inner sight. Yet the moment you calm yourself even briefly, the veil parts, and you realize that God has been speaking all along. Therefore, the lesson is simple yet profound. To receive the signs, you must quiet the waves. Still, the surface of your consciousness and the writing of God will appear clearly. Let go of the belief that silence means abandonment. Instead, cultivate inner stillness until you can perceive the delicate brush of His presence. The signs will come into focus like stars unveiled when the night grows dark and quiet. In truth, they were never absent, only your perception was clouded. Beloved, if Maya is the great veil that blinds the world, then the ego is its most cunning agent, working within the citadel of your own mind. For even when God speaks, even when His signs pierce through the mist of illusion, the ego rushes forward to seize them, to twist them, to wear them like a mask, and to claim authority that does not belong to it. This is why so many become confused, chasing after false signals, mistaking their own desires, fears, or imaginations for divine guidance. The ego whispers, "This is what God wants for you." But what it points to is often only the enlargement of its own comfort, the satisfaction of its own cravings, or the feeding of its own pride. And thus the sign is misread, the message intercepted, the child deceived by the impostor sitting upon the throne of the heart. Consider the parable of a king who sends a messenger bearing a letter of life-changing counsel for his son. Yet on the way, a thief intercepts the messenger, steals the letter, and disguising himself in royal garments, presents himself at the palace as though he were the king's envoy. The son, eager and desperate for guidance, opens the stolen letter, but the words are forged, and they lead him into danger rather than safety. So it is when ego pretends to be God's voice. You long for a sign, you receive an inner stirring, a sudden thought, an impulse, but if you do not test it against the vibration of truth, the ego may have forged the message. It will always guide you toward what keeps its dominion intact, toward attachments, toward fears, toward glorification of self. And in following it, you wander not into freedom but deeper into the labyrinth of delusion. The danger is not that God withholds his signs, but that the ego fabricates its own and presents them as divine. How many have believed that every whim was the whisper of heaven? How many have justified selfishness, cruelty, or recklessness by saying, "This is God's will," when in truth it was only the will of their untamed desires? Here, beloved, the task is to cultivate discernment. The true sign of God does not carry the vibration of restlessness, of urgency born of fear, or of heaviness that clouds the heart. The true sign carries peace. It uplifts, even when it challenges. It clarifies, even when it directs you into difficulty. It never contradicts love, never leads you into bondage, never strengthens the chains of selfishness. Learn then to pause before acting on what you think is a sign. Hold it in the light of prayer, in the stillness of meditation. Ask, does this bring me closer to God? Does this align with love, with truth, with freedom? Or does it only inflate my ego, feed my fears, or bind me further to desire? In that questioning, you will see clearly. For the false voice cannot withstand the scrutiny of stillness. It withers under the gaze of the soul. The true voice of God, by contrast, grows stronger in silence, confirming itself with peace that surpasses understanding. Do not be discouraged that discernment is needed. This is part of the soul's training. God allows the ego to test you, not to punish you, but to strengthen your discrimination so that when his true signs shine, you will recognize them beyond doubt. Every counterfeit you expose prepares you to treasure the authentic. Every false whisper you reject clears the channel for the real voice of spirit. This is the labor of awakening, to learn not only to see the signs, but to see them rightly, stripping away the interference of ego until only God's message remains. Beloved soul, after learning how Maya clouds your vision and how ego counterfeits the divine voice, it is vital now to understand how to recognize a true sign from God when it comes. For indeed, he is always speaking, always sending rays of guidance into the labyrinth of human confusion. The difficulty is not in his communication, but in our perception, our ability to distinguish the pure note of his call from the noisy clamor of the world and the self-made illusions of the ego. How then do we know? What marks a sign as authentically divine? I tell you, the signature of God upon any sign is peace. It arrives clothed not in anxiety but in stillness, not in confusion but in clarity, not in heaviness but in an uplifting current that draws your consciousness upward toward love, toward truth, toward freedom. Imagine a candle flame burning in a quiet room. The windows are closed, the air is still, and the flame rises steady, unwavering, serene. Now open the windows to gusts of wind, and the flame flickers, sputters, nearly extinguishes. A true sign from God is like the sheltered flame. It glows with steadiness, with a calm certainty that does not tremble, even when tested. False signs, born of desire or fear, are like the flickering flame. They excite you for a moment, but soon falter, leaving you unsettled and doubtful. This is why you must measure every sign not by its outward drama, but by the inward vibration it leaves upon your soul. Does it steady you, even if it challenges you? Does it bring clarity, even if it calls you to change? Does it leave behind the fragrance of love? Then you may know, this is the handwriting of God. Often the divine sign comes with simplicity. It is not always the thunderous miracle the restless mind demands. It may be a passage of scripture that leaps out with living force, a word from a stranger that answers the very question you carried in silence, an inner intuition that arises with such gentle persistence you cannot ignore it. The sign does not shout, it invites. It does not compel, it beckons. It respects your freedom even as it guides you toward higher ground. This is the beauty of God's communication. He draws you by love, not by force, by resonance, not by coercion. And what of this very moment, beloved? Do you not feel it even now? The fact that you are here, listening, that your heart stirs with recognition, this itself is a sign, and it bears all the marks of the divine. For these words do not bind you, they liberate you. They do not confuse, they clarify. They do not darken, they uplift. They bring you not into the fever of desire, but into the remembrance of your eternal nature. Can you not feel the steady flame within as you hear them? This is God's signature, written not in ink upon a page, but in vibration upon your soul. Therefore, train yourself to recognize the qualities of His handwriting: peace, clarity, upliftment, love. Reject the false signals that leave you restless, confused, or bound more tightly to ego. Choose instead to open your heart in stillness, to invite God to confirm His voice in prayer and meditation. For when you sit quietly and call upon Him with sincerity, the true signs will glow brighter, like stars revealed when the city lights are extinguished. And in that glow, you will know beyond doubt, the infinite has spoken and the message is real. Beloved one, to see a sign is not enough. To recognize that God has spoken, to feel the stirrings of peace, clarity, and love, that is the beginning, not the end. A sign from the infinite is like a rung appearing on a ladder. It is an invitation, not a destination. The true value of a sign is measured not by the excitement of seeing it, but by the response it awakens in your soul. For how many receive a whisper of guidance, a glimmer of light, and rejoice for a moment, yet return unchanged to their forgetfulness? The sign then fades, and the memory of it becomes like a dream. God sends no message for mere entertainment. Every sign is a call to action, a gentle but undeniable command to rise higher, to align more deeply, to walk with greater sincerity on the path toward Him. And what is this ladder of response? The first rung is humility. When a sign arrives, do not rush to claim it as your possession, as though heaven had bent itself to flatter your ego. Say instead, Lord, you have spoken, and I bow before your mercy. Who am I that you should take notice of me? For humility opens the heart wider, allowing the grace within the sign to sink deeper. Without humility, the gift is spoiled. The ego seizes it and turns it into pride, boasting, God speaks to me, while forgetting that He speaks to all. But with humility, the sign becomes nourishment, dissolving pride and softening the soul. The second rung is gratitude. Acknowledge with joy that you have been answered. Do not dismiss the sign as ordinary, nor take it lightly. Say, thank you, beloved, for hearing the cry of my heart, for arranging this moment of remembrance. Gratitude transforms the sign from a fleeting occurrence into a living memory etched in the soul. It is like watering the seed that has been planted, ensuring that it grows roots and blossoms. Without gratitude, the seed lies neglected and may wither. With gratitude, it thrives and multiplies. For God delights to give more to the heart that treasures what is already given. The third rung is obedience. For every sign carries an instruction, whether obvious or subtle. Sometimes the message is direct. Pray, forgive, let go, act with courage. Sometimes it is indirect, nudging you to return to meditation, to shift your habits, to walk away from the illusions that bind you. Do not ignore this. To receive a sign and fail to act upon it is to close the door of grace. The sign is a lamp lit upon your path. Walk forward in its light, and another lamp will appear, then another, until your way is illuminated. But if you stand idle, admiring the lamp without moving, the darkness will swallow it, and you will wonder why God no longer speaks. He did speak, but you refused to walk. Understand this well. The ladder of response is not climbed in one leap, but in faithful steps. Humility leads to gratitude. Gratitude leads to obedience. Obedience leads to transformation. Each step lifts you higher, closer to the source of the voice that sent the sign. And the beauty of this path is that the more faithfully you respond, the more clearly you will perceive the next signal, the next whisper, the next divine arrangement. God entrusts greater light to those who walk faithfully in the light already given. So, beloved, do not waste this moment. Do not treat this sign, this message, this stirring in your heart as something to admire and forget. Let it become a rung beneath your feet. Place your weight upon it and climb. Humble yourself before the giver. Thank him with all your being, and resolve to act upon the guidance you have received. If you do this, you will find that you are not standing before a single rung, but before an endless ladder reaching from earth to heaven, and every sign you respond to becomes a step drawing you nearer to God. Beloved, you may now wonder, why do signs exist at all? If God is infinite, if he is ever present within and around us, why should he bother with symbols, with circumstances, with these subtle touches that we call signs? The answer reveals one of the most wondrous secrets of the universe. Consciousness is not fragmented, not divided into isolated parts, but interwoven into a single tapestry. All events, all souls, all vibrations are bound together in the vast unity of spirit. God moves through this unity like a hidden current beneath the surface of the ocean, guiding, aligning, weaving. What you call a coincidence, when the right word appears at the right time, when a stranger says exactly what your heart needed to hear, when you happen to arrive at a message like this, it is no accident. It is the infinite arranging threads upon the loom, pulling outer circumstances to mirror the inner cry of your soul. This is the language of divine love. Signs exist because you and God are already in communion. He hears the whisper of your longing before you speak it aloud, and he arranges reflections of that longing in the fabric of creation. Do you see the intimacy of this? It means the universe is not indifferent, not a cold machine turning blindly on the gears of chance. It is alive with meaning, alive with God's presence, alive with his ceaseless desire to draw you back into remembrance. The synchronicities you have dismissed, the timings you thought trivial, the unexpected encounters that changed your path, all of these were signals, threads woven to awaken you. They are God's way of reaching through the dream of Maya to remind you, you are not forgotten. I am here. I guide you still. Think of an invisible thread tied from your heart to the heart of the divine. Every movement of your soul sends a vibration along that thread, and instantly, creation responds. You cry out in despair, and a word of comfort arrives. You seek guidance, and a path opens unexpectedly. You hunger for confirmation, and this very message finds you. The connection is immediate, for distance does not exist in the realm of spirit. What you feel as longing is already being answered in God's eternal now. Signs, then, are the outer reflections of an inner dialogue that never ceases. But why signs instead of direct voices in the sky? Because God honors your freedom. A thunderous command might overwhelm your will, leaving you no choice but to obey. Signs, however, are gentle. They do not force, they invite. They are ambiguous enough that you may dismiss them if you choose, for love cannot coerce. Yet they are clear enough that if your heart is sincere, you will recognize them. In this balance, God respects your autonomy while still guiding you home. He woos you, as a lover woos the beloved, with tokens of affection, with subtle gestures, with hints that stir memory. He does not shatter the dream. He awakens you softly within it. Therefore, when you see a sign, know that it is not random. It is the infinite reaching into the finite. It is the eternal whispering through the temporal. It is the beloved slipping a letter under the door of your heart. And the greatest wonder is this: the sign always points inward. Its purpose is not to distract you with outward fascination, but to draw your attention back to the soul, where God's voice resounds most clearly. The flower blooming at your feet, the word that arrives in perfect timing, the still intuition rising within, all of them say the same thing. Turn within. Remember me. Recognize who you are. This is the universe secret. Creation itself is a living conversation between you and God. The signs are not interruptions of the natural order. They are the natural order revealed. They are love letters scattered across the universe, waiting for you to pick them up, read them with the eyes of the heart, and respond. Once you understand this, you will cease to ask, where are the signs? Instead, you will begin to see them everywhere, in everything. For all of life becomes luminous when you realize it is God's handwriting. Beloved, Now that you understand that signs are not random ornaments upon life's tapestry, but deliberate threads woven by the hand of the divine, you must learn what to do with them. For too often the soul receives a sign, marvels for a moment, perhaps feels inspired for a day, and then sets it aside like a jewel left forgotten in a drawer. This is not the purpose for which the sign was given. Signs are not meant to be collected as curiosities. They are meant to be converted into practice, into transformation, into a reordering of life itself. They are not souvenirs, they are summonses. To see a sign and then remain unchanged is to silence its voice, to let the flame flicker and die. But to see a sign and respond with action is to strike the match that sets ablaze a new chapter of your soul's journey. Think of a compass needle pointing north. The sailor lost at sea finds it, and for a moment his heart leaps with relief, for now he knows the direction. But if he gazes at the compass, admires its beauty, praises its craftsmanship, yet fails to adjust his sails and steer his ship accordingly, what good has the compass done him? It is not the needle itself that saves, but the obedience to its direction. So too with the signs of God. They point, they reveal, they align. But you must move. You must take the inner steering wheel of will and adjust your course. Otherwise, you remain adrift, even while holding the very guidance you once begged for. How then do you turn signs into practice? Begin with acknowledgement. Do not dismiss what has been shown to you, however small or ordinary it may seem. Whisper inwardly, "Yes, Lord, I see. I have received your message." Then reflect, what does this sign call me to? If the sign arrives in the form of peace descending upon your restless heart, perhaps it calls you to cultivate more silence, more meditation, to enter often into that stillness where the peace was born. If the sign comes as an unexpected word of forgiveness, perhaps it is God inviting you to release the bitterness you still carry. If the sign comes as a reminder of His nearness, perhaps it is the gentle command to return daily to communion, no longer neglecting the soul for the noise of the world. Once you discern the call, act upon it without delay. Begin a simple but faithful practice, even if small. God does not demand perfection at once. He delights in sincerity. If your sign was to remember Him, then set aside 5 minutes each morning to sit quietly, close your eyes, and repeat His name with love. If your sign was to let go of anger, then take the first step of releasing the smallest grievance, whispering forgiveness even if you do not yet feel it fully. Each step, however small, honors the sign, and each step opens the door for greater light. Do not underestimate what obedience to one sign can unleash. A single turn of the compass may redirect an entire voyage. A single act of faith may set into motion a chain of blessings you cannot foresee. Signs are seeds. When planted through practice, they grow into trees that bear fruit for years to come. Without planting, they remain seeds in your pocket with potential unrealized. Plant them, water them with devotion, and watch as your life slowly transforms into a living garden of God's presence. Therefore, beloved, let me urge you, whatever sign has come to you, even this very message, do not let it fade into memory without response. Ask yourself even now, what action can I take today to honor this? What small practice can I begin? And when you answer with action, you will find that the sign has accomplished its purpose. It has not only reassured you, but it has set your feet upon the path of remembrance, which is the only path that leads to God. Beloved one, when a sign has stirred your heart and you have taken your first steps of obedience, the question arises, how do I remain awake? For it is not enough to be startled into remembrance once. The deeper work is to sustain that remembrance until it becomes the very rhythm of your existence. The danger is always forgetfulness. Maya does not retreat forever after a single victory. It waits patiently, whispering again and again, lulling you back into sleep. This is why daily practices are essential. They are the anchors of the soul, the lamps that keep the flame of awareness burning in the winds of life. Without them, the sign will fade into memory. With them, the sign will mature into transformation. Begin with the morning stillness. When you awaken from sleep, before you plunge into the duties of the day, before the mind rushes to its burdens and the senses scatter outward, sit quietly. Even if only for a few minutes, place yourself in silence, spine erect, eyes closed, breath calm. Whisper to God, I am awake in you. Guide me this day. This act consecrates the hours ahead, sets the vibration of remembrance, and establishes your soul as the master of the body and mind, not their servant. A day begun in God's presence flows with a current of strength that no storm can overturn. Next, take with you the practice of repetition, the constant weaving of God's name, or a holy affirmation into the fabric of your thoughts. Let the words be simple, alive, and personal. I walk with God. I live in His remembrance. Repeat them silently as you walk, as you work, as you eat, as you rest. These words, carried on the breath, become a shield against distraction and a magnet drawing the soul back whenever it wanders. They are not empty phrases. They are reminders of your eternal identity, seeds of divine vibration planted into every moment. Over time, you will notice that they arise unbidden, echoing in your mind even when you are not consciously repeating them. This is the soul taking command, teaching itself to live in constant remembrance. Then practice the art of pausing. At intervals throughout the day, stop for just a few seconds, close your eyes inwardly, and lift your gaze to the point between the eyebrows, the seat of divine awareness. Breathe once deeply and remember, God is here, now. These pauses act like gentle bells ringing in the midst of activity, calling you back from distraction, from worry, from ego. Each pause is a miniature meditation, a sip of the eternal amidst the flow of time. At night, before sleep, return again to stillness. Do not carry the day's noise into your dreams. Sit, even briefly, and give thanks. Whisper your burdens into God's hands. Affirm your identity once more. I walk with God into the silence of night. In this way, sleep itself becomes prayer, rest becomes meditation, and even your dreams begin to carry the vibration of remembrance. These practices are not burdens, they are lifelines. They are the daily threads that weave the soul into constant communion. They do not require perfection, only sincerity. Missed once, resume again. Distracted once, return again. The strength is in persistence, in refusing to let Maya lull you back into unconsciousness. Remember this, beloved. The sign that awakened you is a gift, but your daily practices are your offering in return. God calls you with love, you respond with devotion. He sends reminders, you sustain them with discipline. In this partnership, the relationship deepens, the communion strengthens, and life itself becomes a living temple. And soon you will realize you are no longer waiting for signs, for all of life has become a sign. Every breath a reminder, every moment a meeting with the infinite. Beloved soul, once you have recognized a sign, once you have responded with humility, gratitude, and practice, there comes a sacred responsibility to live as one who has truly seen. For after this moment, after the eyes of your heart have been opened, you can no longer claim ignorance, nor retreat into the comfort of forgetfulness without consequence. When God sends a sign, it is not only to console, it is to call. It is a turning point, a moment in which the soul stands at a crossroads. To honor the sign is to step forward into communion. To ignore it is to refuse grace. Do not imagine that you can remain neutral, for every sign requires an answer. God's whisper, gentle as it is, demands decision. Will you walk with me, or will you turn away again into sleep? This is why I tell you with great solemnity, today is the day of transformation. Not tomorrow, not someday, but now. How long have you longed for confirmation that God sees you, that He hears you, that He has not abandoned you? And now the confirmation has come. What will you do with it? Will you tuck it away like a letter read once and forgotten? Or will you carry it in your breast pocket, close to your heart, reading it again and again until its truth burns into your very being? The decision you make now shapes the rhythm of your destiny. Grace has opened the door, but you must walk through. To live as one who has seen the sign is to live differently. It is to allow remembrance to color your thoughts, your words, your actions. When fear rises, you will say, "No, I have seen the sign. God is with me." When doubt tempts you, you will answer, "No, I have been reminded. I am not alone." When the world clamors for your attention, you will whisper, "My attention belongs first to the one who called me." This shift is not always dramatic outwardly, but it is profound inwardly. It is the difference between wandering as a beggar and walking as a child of a king. The outward path may look the same. You rise, you work, you eat, you rest, but the inner awareness is transformed, and with it, the vibration of your life. Understand this clearly. God does not send signs merely to comfort. He sends them to commission. A soldier who receives orders does not rejoice, only at the paper in his hands he acts. A servant who hears the voice of his master does not only smile at the sound he moves. Likewise, you who have been called by this sign must act. Deepen your devotion, renew your practices. Commit yourself to daily remembrance with a seriousness you may never have had before. This is the way to honor the grace you have been given. And remember, beloved, the refusal of a sign is not without cost. When grace is offered and ignored, the soul suffers a heavier burden of restlessness, for it knows in its depths that it has spurned the beloved's call. Do not let this be your fate. Do not let the joy of this moment be wasted by neglect. Instead, let it ignite a fire of commitment, a vow that from this day onward you will live with awakened eyes, with an attentive heart, with a soul fixed upon God. So I say to you now, rise in the dignity of your divine heritage. Walk as one who has seen the sign. Live with courage, with devotion, with love. For you are no longer wandering in darkness, you are walking in light. And with every step you take, the path will grow brighter, until it leads you into the eternal embrace of the one who has always been calling you. Beloved, we now arrive at the most crucial stage of your awakening, to seal the remembrance so firmly within your soul that it can never again be erased by the winds of doubt, the waves of restlessness, or the whispers of Maya. For many seekers taste the sweetness of God's nearness. They see a sign, they feel the thrill of recognition, but soon they drift back into forgetfulness, as though the memory of heaven were only a passing dream. To prevent this, you must engrave the truth into the very fabric of your consciousness. This is done through the holy alchemy of affirmation, repetition, breath, and identity. These four together form a sacred seal, a bond that no darkness can undo. Let us begin with the declaration. Speak aloud with reverence and certainty. God speaks to me. I hear his voice. I live in his presence. Do not say it as if reciting words from a page. Say it as if you are declaring a truth written into the foundations of the universe. Speak slowly, letting each phrase vibrate not only in your throat but in your heart. Again, repeat it. God speaks to me. I hear his voice. I live in his presence. With each repetition, feel the words ceasing to be merely sound and becoming vibration, ceasing to be borrowed and becoming your own. This is the first stage, declaration. Now move to repetition. Whisper the words again and again, rhythmically, until the rhythm carries you, until the phrase becomes like a river flowing through your mind. Do not tire of the repetition. The ego will say, enough, I have heard this already. But the soul knows that through repetition, truth is etched deeper. Just as water dripping upon stone carves it with time, so repetition carves divine remembrance into the stone of your consciousness. Continue until the words echo of their own accord, as though the soul itself is whispering them without your effort. Next comes identity. Close your eyes and imagine the words dissolving into light. See the light surrounding you, filling you, becoming you. You no longer merely say, God speaks to me, you feel it. His voice is not an outer echo but the very intuition rising within your own soul. You no longer say, I hear his voice. You know it as surely as you know your own heartbeat. You no longer say, I live in his presence. You experience that presence filling the room, filling your breath, filling the universe until nothing exists outside it. In this state, the affirmation is no longer spoken. It has become your identity. Finally, anchor this with the breath. Inhale deeply and silently affirm, God speaks to me. Feel his message flowing into your being with the air, life itself as his speech. Exhale and affirm, I hear his voice. Release every doubt, every noise, until only his vibration remains. Then rest briefly in the stillness between breaths, feeling, I live in his presence. Let this cycle repeat until the breath itself becomes prayer, until every inhalation feels like God entering, every exhalation feels like surrender into his will, and every pause feels like eternity embraced. This is how remembrance is sealed. Declaration ignites it, repetition deepens it, identity transforms it, and breath anchors it. Practice this not once but daily, until it becomes second nature. Until in times of trial the words rise unbidden, shielding you like armor. Until in moments of joy they blossom naturally as gratitude. With this seal, no force of Maya can steal from you the certainty that God is with you, speaking, guiding, loving. So, beloved, let this be your vow. From this day forward, I will not only see the signs of God, I will live in them. I will breathe them. I will become them. For when the remembrance is sealed, your life itself becomes the sign. Your presence becomes the message. Your every breath becomes proof to the world that God is real and near. Beloved soul, now that the truth has been declared, repeated, installed, and sealed within you, let us bring this sacred journey to its gentle close, not as one who ends a story, but as one who steps through a doorway into a new life. For the words you have heard are not merely teachings to ponder and set aside. They are living vibrations, currents of spirit that have entered your heart. They are not meant to fade with the passing of this hour, but to remain as a constant inner flame, a light to guide you through every valley of uncertainty and every mountain of challenge. And so I call you now into a final ritual, a benediction that anchors the experience and consecrates your soul anew. Sit quietly, if you can, as though you are in the innermost sanctuary of a temple, not a temple made of stone, but the temple of your own body and breath. Straighten your spine, the living altar where spirit descends. Place your hands upon your heart, for it is the true sanctuary where God has always lived, waiting for your recognition. Close your eyes to the outer world of noise and distraction, and open the inner gaze toward the eternal light shining at the point between your eyebrows, the spiritual eye, the star of guidance. Feel the sacred stillness enveloping you now, as if the universe itself pauses to join in your prayer. Take a slow breath. Inhale, feeling as though you are drawing into yourself the golden light of dawn, the radiance of God's presence entering every cell of your being. Hold that light in your heart for a moment, letting it fill you completely. Then exhale, and with the breath release every trace of fear, every shadow of doubt, every lingering sorrow. Again inhale, whispering within, I am light. Exhale, whispering, I am free. Rest in the stillness between breaths and feel deeply, God lives through me. Let this rhythm continue for several breaths until your entire being hums with the vibration of these truths. And now hear this blessing, which I speak not from myself alone, but from the Infinite One, who speaks through every true word of love. May this day mark the end of forgetfulness for you. May you never again doubt that God is near, that He sees you, that He speaks to you. May you walk from this moment clothed in the certainty that every step is guided, every breath is heard, every longing is answered. May peace settle upon you like a mantle. May joy arise within you like an ever-new spring, and may strength enfold you so that no storm of circumstance can shake the remembrance of who you are. Carry this remembrance into your nights and your mornings. Let your first thought upon waking be, God is with me. Let your last whisper before sleep be, I rest in His presence. And through the day, as you face challenges, as you meet others, as you encounter both sorrows and joys, let the vibration of this sign remind you, you are not alone, you are not forgotten, you are eternally beloved. For once God has spoken, once the sign has been seen and the remembrance sealed, there can be no turning back into darkness. Light has entered, and light remains. So I bless you now, beloved child of the Infinite. Walk forth into your life as a bearer of this truth. Let your presence be a sign to others, a living testimony that God speaks, that He guides, that He loves without end. And when you forget, as the human mind so often does, return to this breath, this prayer, this remembrance, and you will find Him waiting, as He has always waited, whispering still, I am here. I am with you. I am your eternal home. If you wake up with an unusual sensation and inexplicable heat in the spine, a pressure on the forehead, a tingling in your hands or feet that wasn't there before, do not dismiss it. Do not rush to categorize it with labels drawn only from the physical world. Pause. Still the mind. Lean into the silence within. For in that moment, the Infinite may be whispering to you not through a voice in the sky, but through the sacred language of your own body. The body is not a crude machine, a lump of matter dragging behind the soul. It is a divine instrument, created not by random evolution but by intelligent, spiritual design. It is the outer temple built around the inner shrine. And just as bells ring in the steeples of cathedrals to announce the hour of prayer, so too does your body ring with sensation when the soul begins to awaken or when God comes near. Every nerve, every pulse, every cell carries the memory of spirit. This temple responds to the presence of the divine not only in dream and devotion, but sometimes in the physical realm, in ways so subtle the mind may miss them unless the heart is listening. Most people walk through life ignoring the whispers of their own bodies. They brush aside the sacred signals as sleep posture, as muscle tension, as fleeting emotion. But the wise soul knows. The soul speaks through stillness, and the divine often chooses the body to echo what the mind refuses to hear. For the body is the veil through which light can still pass, and spirit, in its great compassion, will use anything, yes, even an ache, even a vibration, even a spontaneous movement in sleep to pull the soul back toward remembrance. Yogananda taught that the body, when purified and aligned, becomes a divine antenna, a receiving station tuned to higher frequencies of light and intuition. In his own life, he experienced the phenomena of the body responding to inner realization, tingling in the spine, spontaneous breath suspension, energy flowing upward like warm honey toward the spiritual eye. These were not imagined. They were not symptoms of illness. They were evidence of divine contact, of soul activity made visible in form. Think of the body as a violin, and the soul as the master musician. When the divine touches the strings of the spine, vibrations occur, sometimes gentle, sometimes intense, but always purposeful. If your hand twitches in sleep, it may not be random. If your foot tingles upon waking, it may not be circulation. If you feel pressure at the forehead before opening your eyes, it may not be stress. It may be the hand of spirit, tapping gently on the surface of your consciousness, saying, "Wake up, I am here, pay attention." This is not to invite superstition. It is to reawaken reverence. It is to reintroduce the idea long forgotten in this age of hyper-rationalisms, that the body and the soul are not strangers, they are friends. And the divine, who lives at the center of your being, will use every channel available to reach you, including the channel of your flesh. So I say to you now, if you wake up with a sign in your body, don't rush to the mind for analysis. Drop into the soul. Ask, "What is this? Why now? Is this you, Lord?" And then listen. Not with ears, not with intellect, but with vibration. For the answer may not come in words, it may come in waves, in a sense of peace, in an inner breath, in the feeling of being watched over. And in that moment, the body will no longer feel heavy. It will feel holy. Not something to escape from, but something to listen to. Not an obstacle to God, but the very doorway through which He sometimes enters, when all else is asleep. To awaken spiritually is not merely to change what you believe, it is to remember what you are. And in that remembrance, the first veil that must fall is the illusion that you are this body. That this skin, this structure, this bundle of bone and nerve is your true identity. No, you are not this form. You are the formless spark within it. You are not the vessel. You are the divine current that animates the vessel. And yet, paradoxically, it is often the body that first stirs when the soul begins to awaken. When God's presence draws near, the body, though not the self, shudders with recognition. The spine quivers, the skin tingles, the breath pauses. And so you must come to understand this sacred contradiction. Though you are not the body becomes a messenger when the soul stirs. This is the shock of identity, realizing that your sensations, when rightly understood, are not always physiological, they are spiritual echoes. Just as a tuning fork resonates when another fork nearby is struck, so too your body resonates when touched by divine frequency. These moments, waking with a pressure at the crown, feeling warmth in the heart, sensing subtle movement along the spine, are not proof that you are physical. They are proof that something far greater is moving through the physical, that spirit is brushing against matter, and the matter cannot help but respond. Yogananda often said that the body is the showroom of the soul. It is not where your journey ends, it is where your journey is displayed. And so, when you awaken with a sign on your body, do not fall deeper into identification with flesh. Rise above it. See the sign as a symbol. Understand that this body is not you, but it is the place where you are being shown who you truly are. A pressure at the forehead, the ajna chakra stirring, a tingle in the palms, the prana flowing outward through the hands, longing to serve, a shiver up the spine, the kundalini whispering that it is ready to ascend. These are not accidents. These are divine letters, written not in ink but in sensation, and signed by the hand of the infinite. It is only the ego false self that rushes to pathologize what the soul is trying to personalize. The ego says, "This is strange. This must be fixed." The soul says, "This is sacred. Let me listen." The ego wants explanations. The soul wants communion. The ego seeks to quiet the body with pills and labels. The soul seeks to enter it with presence and awe. The more spiritually attuned you become, the more your body will begin to mirror your inner shifts. And this is not regression. This is evolution. The great yogis were not numb to their bodies, they were illumined in them. They felt vibrations most cannot detect. They experienced movement not triggered by muscle, but by spirit. They wept when the divine current surged through the spine. They shook in stillness. They glowed in silence. Why? Because the body, though not divine in itself, had become a perfect conductor of divinity. This is your destiny, not to worship the body, nor to suppress it, but to use it as the compass that points back to your true self. And that self, O radiant soul, is pure consciousness, untouched by time, unbound by form, ever awake, ever free. So the next time you feel something stir in the flesh that cannot be explained, don't run from it. Bow to it. Ask, is this a signal, a gift, a message? And then turn within. You may find that what you thought was your body speaking was actually your soul finally being heard. There are moments when you rise from sleep and feel that something has shifted, not in the mind, not in memory, but in the subtle temple of the body itself. You do not know why, but a part of you knows something has occurred. A sensation lingers, a warm current behind the heart, a pressure between the brows, a tingling in the soles of your feet as if the ground itself were humming. And while the mind may search for explanations rooted in posture or circulation or sleep position, the soul already understands. These are not mere byproducts of sleep. They are messages. These are sigzicard, recurring patterns that often appear in the early hours as a whisper from the divine, echoing through the subtle layers of your form. Let me guide you through 3 of the most common among them, so that you might recognize their language and respond with reverence instead of fear, with listening instead of logic. The first, spinal heat or vibration, especially around the heart or the spiritual eye. This is perhaps the most profound and unmistakable of all the signs. You wake and feel as though a warm stream is flowing upward along your spine. There is no pain, no discomfort, only a radiant current, sometimes subtle, sometimes intense. It may gather in the chest as a gentle glow, or rise toward the point between the eyebrows like a sacred breeze. This, dear soul, is not imagination. This is the life force, the prana, stirred by divine intelligence. It is the whisper of kundalini, often quiet, but unmistakable, letting you know that the inner fire has been touched, that God is awakening you not through thought, but through vibration. The heart center burns with divine love, and the ajna pulses with spiritual will. In such moments, do not rush into movement. Lie still. Place your attention on the current. Breathe gently. Receive it. Let the divine magnetism work. Even if it passes in seconds, it has altered your inner field. The second, involuntary twitching or spontaneous movement in sleep. You may wake to find that your arm jerked, your leg kicked, your body shifted without dream or conscious command. Or perhaps your eyes flickered rapidly beneath closed lids, though you remember no dream. These spontaneous movements, especially if they occur in stillness or without agitation, may not be neurological, they may be spiritual. The soul, in its journey beyond the body during sleep, often engages in subtle practices. Sometimes you are being taught in the astral realm, practicing breath, absorbing light, engaging in higher Kriya under the guidance of divine masters. And when your body returns, it echoes those movements. Yogananda himself spoke of students performing mudras in sleep, or waking from visions of Kriya with their breath already suspended. These are not to be feared, they are to be welcomed. They are the soul reminding the body that it too is a student on the path. The third, tingling or numbness in the hands, feet, or crown. This sign is gentle, yet sacred. You wake and feel a gentle buzz in your palms, or your crown feels light, expanded, almost as if something opened. The feet may tingle, as though energy has passed through. In isolation, these sensations may be dismissed as poor circulation. But when they come with a sense of calm, reverence, or inexplicable peace, they may well be the residue of a spiritual current. The crown tingles when grace touches you from above. The palms and feet often carry pranic charges after astral release, or when higher energies move through the meridians in dream state. These too are sacred. They are echoes of something that occurred beyond the veil of sleep. Do not chase the meaning, but do acknowledge the moment. If any of these signs arise within you, do not panic. Do not analyze them to death. And do not casually mention them to others who may lack the inner ears to hear. Protect the sacred. Enter stillness. Listen. Ask inwardly, was this you, my Lord? Was this the brush of thy presence? And wait not for a voice, but for a feeling. If peace deepens, if your breath slows, if joy arises without cause, then the answer has already come. Remember, the body speaks when the soul is too quiet to shout. The divine speaks through signs when the intellect would block words. So wake gently, observe carefully, and walk reverently. The language of spirit is subtle, but it never fails to reach those who are willing to feel with the soul. The signs are not absent, they are abundant. God is not silent, He is always speaking. But the question is not whether the message is being sent, it is whether we are still enough, open enough, surrendered enough to receive it. The divine current flows, but the receiver must be attuned. And most souls, caught in the web of false identity, miss the signal not because it is faint, but because they are deafened by the roar of egoic noise. The false self, the personality, the conditioned mind, the ego's endless narration does not want the subtle, it wants the loud. It wants explanations that fit within its logic, sensations that serve its desires, signs that flatter its importance. But the language of the divine is never shaped to please the ego. It is shaped to dissolve it. That is why we miss the signs. That is why the sacred so often passes through our awareness like wind through the trees present, moving, but unrecognized. You wake up with a strange feeling in your chest, and instead of pausing to feel, to inquire inwardly, to be still, you reach for your phone. You scroll. You distract. The mind says, that was probably nothing. And so the message vanishes. You feel a tingle at your crown, a vibration in your spine, a warmth behind your heart. And the ego immediately injects fear. What if something is wrong? And so, the gift is recoded as danger, as pathology. You rise quickly, chase answers on search engines, speak to someone who lives only in the realm of matter, and the divine thread is severed by the scalpel of overanalysis. The false self cannot interpret divine communication because it has no reverence. It views the body as a utility, the world as a stage for its dramas, and sensation as an inconvenience to be explained away or medicated. It fears what it cannot control, and God cannot be controlled. The body, when used as a temple of spirit, begins to vibrate in unfamiliar ways. The breath may still itself. The limbs may stir without will. The spine may burn with heat that has no cause. The mind, if tethered to ego, will panic, but the soul, if remembered, will kneel in wonder. This is the difference. To receive the signs of spirit, the ego must be unseated. The desire to always know must be replaced with the desire to feel. The instinct to dismiss must be transformed into the instinct to revere. This is the beginning of humility. And humility is the door through which divine wisdom enters. Yogananda said, God does not shout, He whispers. But the whisper is not to the mind, it is to the soul. And if you are too loud within, if the theater of thoughts is never closed, if the ego is always broadcasting its opinions, then even if God touches you with light, you will miss the imprint. The sensation will come and be ignored. The symbol will rise and be explained away. The miracle will occur and be labeled coincidence. And so, the journey of recognizing signs is not first about interpretation, it is about purification. You must clear the fog of false identity. You must begin to trust again what you feel in stillness more than what you hear in noise. You must make sacred once more the body, the breath, the moment. You must become as a child, not childish, but childlike in your willingness to wonder, to ask, to believe, to wait. The false self is impatient. It says, "Give me the meaning now." But the true self says, "Let me feel the mystery longer." One contracts, the other expands. So if you have missed the signs before, do not grieve. God does not run out of messages. He will come again in stillness, in sleep, in sensation. He will speak again, not with words, but with breath, with vibration, with tingling, with fire. And when he does this time, you will not rush to dismiss. You will stay. You will soften. You will listen not with ears, but with reverence. And that is when the message will be understood. There are moments in your life, often quiet and unplanned, when the veil thins. When you are no longer just a person moving through time, but a soul caught in a divine embrace touched not through words, but through sensation. These are the moments when God chooses not to speak to your intellect, but to your incarnation. He does not thunder from a mountaintop or send visions in clouds. He stirs the breath, he warms the spine, he ignites the forehead, and in so doing, he reminds you, "I am here, in you, around you, through you. I am not separate, I am not distant. I have made your very body my temple." This is the sacred mystery Yogananda taught not as philosophy, but as experience, that the divine in all its immensity speaks in the smallest tremble of your physical frame. You must understand, the body is not a prison for the soul. It is the sacred vehicle through which the soul can experience, reflect, and ultimately realize its unity with the infinite. Yes, the soul is beyond the body. Yes, you are more than flesh. But God, in his compassion, speaks to you where you are, and for most, that is in the physical world. So he places signs on the path, and sometimes those signs are felt in the skin, in the nerve, in the subtle shimmer beneath the ribcage. The body, when purified by devotion, becomes an instrument of revelation. Yogananda spoke often of his own physical science experiences in meditation, where the breath would stop, the heartbeat would slow, the body would become a still flame, and then, even in that stillness, light would rise in the spine, bliss would expand from the heart, and God's presence would be undeniable. He described how, even in sleep, the body would sometimes be moved by divine will, the soul engaged in subtle work in the astral world, reflected in the smallest movements of the limbs, or a sudden heat across the forehead upon waking. These were not dreams. These were encounters, not hallucinations, but holy invitations. Why would God speak through the body? Because the body is the loudest channel most people still listen to. The mind is chaotic, the heart is wounded, but the body still obeys silence. It cannot lie. It reveals what the soul cannot yet speak. And so when your soul is ready, and your mind is too noisy, God moves through the vessel you can still hear. He creates a sensation, a sign, a shift, and in that moment, the soul stirs and says, "This was not mine. This came from elsewhere. This must be him." This is the mercy of spirit. He meets you where you are. If you cannot yet hear the voice in your meditation, he will touch your spine. If your devotion is dull, he will warm your heart with no known cause. If you are too distracted to pray, he will give you a sign on the body that calls you to attention, that says, "Come back, I am still speaking." And yet this, too, is a test. For just as easily as these signs can draw you into God, the ego can hijack them into fear. You must remain vigilant. When you feel the divine touch on your body, resist the urge to panic, to pathologize, to dissect it with mental scalpels. Instead, become still. Sit in prayer. Breathe in his presence. Say, "Speak, Lord. Your child is listening." And you will hear not in language, but in light. Not in sentences, but in silence. The body may be the doorway, but what you find beyond it is not flesh, it is spirit. What begins as a sensation becomes a revelation. What begins as a twitch becomes a teaching. What begins as heat becomes holiness. This is your inheritance, Sino, to be afraid of your body, not to suppress or ignore it, but to anoint it with reverence. For the divine, in all his mercy, uses even this body of clay to reach you. And in doing so, he shows you who you truly are. Not dust, but light cloaked in dust. Not form, but force. Not a seeker, but the sought. The body is not random. Its energies do not move without meaning. Beneath the visible flesh lies a sacred architecture, a ladder of light strung through the spine, connecting the densest instincts of survival to the highest perceptions of divine illumination. This is the chakra system, not as myth but as mystical map, given to the yogis not through theory but through inner revelation. These 7 centers wheels of energy, gates of consciousness spin and pulse in harmony with your soul's evolution. They are not simply symbolic. They are vibratory organs that govern your interaction with the inner and outer worlds. And when God speaks to you through the body, he often speaks through one of these gates. The location of the sign is not arbitrary, it is specific, sacred, and rich in meaning. To understand where the sensation arises is to begin to understand what the message means. Let us begin with the lower back, the base of the spine, the Muladhara chakra, seat of survival and security. When you wake with a pressure here, a tightness, a heat, it is often a sign that a foundational fear is being purified. The root is where karmic energies are stored in their densest form. Sometimes, when old fierce ancestral, childhood, or past life begin to loosen their grip, they release as physical tension or heat in this area. It may feel uncomfortable, even alarming. But it is not danger, it is release. The divine is digging into the soil of your being, pulling out what no longer belongs, uprooting the illusion that you must cling to the world for safety. You are being reminded, your true home is not in material security, but in divine presence. Then there is the heart, the Anahata chakra center of divine love, of compassion, of union. If you wake and feel a warm bloom in your chest, or a tender ache, as if something soft and holy were pressing gently from within, this is the heart center opening. Often this comes after prayer, or a dream of someone you love, or a moment of great soul vulnerability. The feeling may be sweet, like honey melting in the ribs, or sorrowful, like a weeping in the silence. Either way, it is sacred. The heart is where the human self begins to touch the divine self. When God speaks here, it is to break you open, not to hurt you, but to soften the hard shell of ego, so that light may pour through. Stay with this sensation. Do not close it down. Breathe through the ache. Say, "Thank you for reminding me I am made of love." And now the forehead, the space between the eyebrows, the Ajna chakra, or spiritual eye. This is the most direct portal to divine perception. If you wake with pressure here, or a gentle pulse, or even light that lingers behind closed eyes, do not ignore it. This is not a physical issue. This is the inner eye being touched. Yogananda often spoke of this sensation, how, in deep meditation, or even sleep, when the breath stills and the consciousness rises, the spiritual eye begins to activate. It may come as a glow, a flash, a throbbing, a gentle weight. It is the divine knocking, saying, "Look here, not outward." When this sign appears, sit in stillness. Gaze gently upward. Enter the doorway. This chakra is the throne of intuition. It is where the ego dies and the soul sees. A pressure here is not to be feared, it is to be followed. Do not forget the feet, often overlooked, yet deeply symbolic. When you wake and your feet tingle or feel subtly electric, it is not always from sleep posture. It may be a sign that your karma is shifting, that energy is descending to ground what has been received. The feet represent your connection to the earth. When the higher chakras are active, the body must balance. The current flows downward, integrating spiritual realization into physical form. A tingling in the feet can also be a call to walk towards service, toward a new place, toward surrender. It is the sign that you are being asked to move, not just physically, but energetically, into alignment with your soul's next step. Each chakra is a mouth of God, a station of message, a gateway of transformation. When you feel a sign in the body, trace it inward, ask not only what, but where. Where you feel it will tell you what is being touched. The body is a scroll written in divine ink. The chakras are its punctuation marks. A pressure here, a heat there, a vibration in another, all of it sacred, all of it meaningful. But do not rush to analyze. Feel first, pray second, interpret last. The mind will want to assign logic, but the soul knows how to listen in reverence. And it is reverence, say not information, that unlocks the code. Say inwardly, Lord, if this is you speaking through my spine, my skin, my senses, let me feel not as a body, but as a soul. And then breathe, trust, align. When the sign comes, whether in your chest as warmth, in your brow as pressure, in your limbs as tingling, you are faced with a holy choice. Will you ignore it, or will you align with it? Will you dismiss the moment as mere sensation, or will you meet it as a message? The difference between the seeker who drifts and the seeker who ascends lies not in the number of signs they receive, but in how they respond when they feel them. God is always speaking. The body is always humming with divine data. But alignment is the act of returning to center again and again with reverence, with patience, with deep inner stillness. Without alignment, the sign becomes noise. With alignment, it becomes revelation. What does it mean to align? It means that when something sacred stirs within your body, you do not rush into interpretation or outward reaction. You go inward. You pause. You allow the moment to open its own meaning in silence. Too often, the ego wants to convert the experience into immediate action. What should I do about this? It asks. But spiritual wisdom does not begin in doing, it begins in being. So when the sign arrives, let your first instinct be breath. Breathe as a soul, not as a body. Let your inhale be an act of receiving. Let your exhale be an act of listening. The breath is the bridge between sensation and spirit. Practice this now, so you may remember it later when the sign next comes. Inhale gently through the nose. I receive. Exhale slowly and silently. I listen. Again. Inhale. I receive. Exhale. I listen. This is not passive. This is alignment. It is the act of shifting your frequency to match the divine tone that has just touched you. In doing so, you allow the sign to penetrate deeper. You allow the message to complete itself. You become a receptive vessel rather than a resisting intellect. After you breathe, enter a moment of inner prayer, not with words, but with awareness. Let your heart ask, what is this, Lord? Why now? Not with demand, but with devotion. Do not expect an answer in sentences. Expect a shift in energy, a subtle deepening of peace, a loosening of fear. That is how spirit confirms, not with argument, but with vibration. Then, if the message begins to unfold, journal it. Write not for analysis, but for embodiment. Let the journal be your temple of transcription. Record the moment as you experienced it. I woke with heat in the chest. I felt peace. My mind was quiet. Something stirred. Write these things not to understand them fully, but to honor them. When you record the sacred, it stays with you. When you neglect it, it fades into forgetfulness. Yogananda urged his disciples to track their inner experiences, not to boast or prove, but to build spiritual memory. For the soul forgets easily in the noise of the world. But written devotion is a candle that can be lit again and again. You may also respond with sacred stillness, choosing not to move into speech or distraction for several minutes after waking. If the sign came during sleep, this is especially potent. Sit up in bed, eyes closed, spine tall, gaze lifted, simply abide. Let the residue of the divine sensation deepen into realization. This practice, simple yet powerful, creates a golden bridge between the astral and the physical. It affirms to God, I felt you, I noticed, I stayed. You may find in these quiet moments that the sign becomes a doorway. What began as a flicker of sensation expands into a state. What began as heat becomes presence. And then, alignment has truly occurred, not because you controlled the moment, but because you offered yourself to it. And if nothing comes, no interpretation, no clarity, do not despair. The soul receives in layers. What you align with now may unfold days from now in meditation, in intuition, in choice. The flower does not bloom when you demand. It blooms when you are faithful to water it. Say this inwardly as your vow of response. I will not analyze what is sacred. I will not rush what is divine. When you speak, Lord of in through the body, I will breathe. I will listen. I will align. And in that vow, the the soul grows stronger. The light becomes brighter. The signs become clearer. Because God sees that his messages are not being wasted. Not all signs come wrapped in sweetness. Sometimes the divine does not whisper gently in the heart sometimes. He presses against you with the force of purification. You may wake with a burning in the spine that unnerves you, a tightness in the chest that stirs old fears, a heat rising toward the head that overwhelms your nervous system with sensations you cannot explain. And in that moment, the ego will speak quickly. This must be wrong. This must be dangerous. This must be stopped. But the soul, if you are still enough to hear it, will speak differently. This is fire, but it is sacred fire. This is discomfort, but it is divine refinement. This is not destruction, it is dissolution. The sign that feels unpleasant is not a punishment. It is a gift wrapped in the intensity required to burn away what can no longer stay. Yogananda warned that spiritual awakening is not always soft. The process of ascending is not merely a rise, enjoy it, is often a fall of everything untrue. And when divine energy enters the body with power, especially after years of unconscious living, the accumulated density of karma, of fear, of unprocessed memory rises to the surface. It must. It cannot remain in the presence of rising light. This is why the heat comes. This is why the tightness comes. Not to harm you, but to open you. Not to punish, but to purify. Let me tell you this. When you feel spiritual discomfort in the body, especially after prayer, after a dream, after a wave of devotion, it is often because something deep within you is being shaken loose. The vibration is rising, the past is dissolving, the false self is resisting. And in that friction, there is pain, not suffering inflicted by God, but resistance surfacing from ego. This is not the time to panic. This is the time to remain, to soften, to say, Lord, if this is you, do not stop. Let me awaken through it. This prayer is not small. It is the soul's brave cry in the temple of trial. You are asking not for ease, but for transformation. You are allowing God to finish what he began, not just to touch you with light, but to clear out all that stands in its way. This is not the path of the comfortable. This is the path of the sincere. So what can you do, practically, when the sign feels too intense? First, anchor the breath. Let the body know you are safe. Breathe into the sensation without fear. Inhale slowly, exhale completely. Repeat inwardly. I am safe in God. I am not this discomfort. I am the soul being purified. Second, surrender the analysis. Do not rush to label the experience. Let it be, sit with it, watch it without judgment. Trust that if it is truly divine in origin, it will not harm you, will only release what harms you. Third, invite God into the very center of the sensation. Instead of resisting the burning in your heart, say, Lord, burn me clean. Instead of recoiling from the pressure at your brow, say, break open my sight. Instead of fearing the fire in the spine, say, rise through me. These prayers are not poetic, they are portals. They change the frequency of the experience. They invite the infinite into your finite being, and where he is welcomed, peace always follows. Yogananda once said that spiritual progress is often measured not by how good you feel, but by how much truth you are willing to let burn away. That burning may occur in your thoughts, it may occur in your emotions, but often it begins in the body, because the body holds what the mind has buried. So do not shrink from the heat. Do not turn away from the sign just because it is wrapped in fire. The same sun that scorches the desert also causes the lotus to bloom. It is not the heat, it is what you do with it. Say this now within your being. If ever the sign comes heavy, God, if this is you, I surrender to the flame. Let me not fear what you send to cleanse. Let me awaken, even if the awakening trembles me. And then, trust, rest, breathe. For he who stirs you with fire does so only to prepare your soul for light. There comes a moment in the spiritual life, and not dramatic, but thunderous in its silence, when the seeker stops asking, why is this happening to me? And begins to whisper with awe, this is happening for me. In that moment, identity begins to shift, not from body to mind, not from pain to peace, but from ego to soul, from temporal to eternal. And when you wake with a sign, whether soft or strong, soothing or strange, you must remember this. The sign is not just a sensation, it is a summons. It is the soul's awakening call, and it is being sent not to disturb you, but to remind you that you are not this fleeting form lying in bed. You are not the twitch. You are not the ache. You are the being to whom the message is addressed. You are the one being awakened. The great illusion of modern life is that we are our sensations, our emotions, our thoughts, that we must define ourselves by what arises. But you are not what arises. You are the awareness in which all things arise and dissolve. You are the sky, not the clouds, the soul, not the shift, the eternal witness, not the passing weather of sensation. And yet, the signs that come to your body are not distractions. They are divine nudges from the infinite saying, "Return to me. Remember what you are." Every time you feel something stir within you, a gentle pressure behind the forehead, a warmth blooming in the chest, a subtle tingling in the limbs, know that this is not evidence that you are just a nervous system. It is proof that something greater is moving through the system, that the soul is alive and active, and the body, in its sacred sensitivity, is echoing the touch of the spirit. Yogananda often reminded us, you are not the body, you are not the mind. You are the immortal soul, a wave on the ocean of spirit. When you feel a sign in the body, let it not drag you deeper into physical identification. Let it elevate your gaze. Let it stir remembrance, not confusion. The divine does not speak through the body to confuse you. He does it to awaken you because the mind would not listen, because the heart had become too distracted, because the soul was calling and needed to be heard. Let this truth become your mantra, your inner alignment, your holy shield when the body trembles or vibrates or burns with something unknown. I am not this body. I am not this mind. I am the immortal soul, receiving the voice of God. Repeat it now, slowly, with breath, with stillness, with sacred fire behind your words. Let it settle not only into your thoughts, but into your cells, into the fabric of your aura. Let it become your default remembrance every time the body shifts in a way you do not understand. Instead of fear, declare identity. Instead of questioning, affirm being. Instead of spiraling outward, return inward to the one in you who is eternal. The sign, dear soul, is not a warning. It is a remembrance. It is not here to tell you you are broken. It is here to remind you that you are whole, that you are light, that you are known, that you are already in communion, and you only need to remember it. You are not waiting for God to arrive. He is already within you, stirring your temple from the inside. You are not waiting for a miracle. You are the miracle, wrapped in skin, slowly unraveling back into light. So when the next sign comes, do not run, do not analyze, do not even ask. Simply say, "Ah, he remembers me, and I remember him." And let that remembrance become your peace. Your body is not in the way of Godit, is the way God has chosen, for now, to reach you. You may have long believed that holiness lives only in the hidden, in the heights of meditation or the silence of the Himalayas. But holiness also breathes in your chest as you sleep. It moves beneath your skin when you dream. It hums in your cells in the early hours before dawn. The divine does not limit himself to scriptures or sacred buildings. He comes to you directly through the tingling in your limbs, the warmth in your spine, the pressure at your brow, the electric stillness in your heart. The body is not a barrier. It is a bell tower, and sometimes the beloved rings it just to see if you are listening. So listen, not just with ears, but with reverent attention. Listen to the whisper of the skin, the breath that deepens unprovoked, the subtle pulse that draws your gaze upward the moment you wake. When these signs come, do not dismiss them as random. They are not noise. They are music's sacred rhythms played by unseen hands, drawing you back to the memory that your body is not separate from your path. It is part of the path. It is the altar God has chosen to place his signs upon. Let your body become a living temple. Let it be consecrated not by how it looks, but by how deeply you listen to it. When a sign arises, let that moment become your morning bell of worship. Instead of rolling over, stop. Instead of fleeing into the habits of distraction, pause. Enter that inner sanctuary where the sign points you. Ask, "Speak, Lord." Then say with your whole breath, "I am listening." You need no incense. You need no holy water. You have your spine, the sacred ladder of remembrance. You have your breath, the divine river that flows in and out without asking. You have your gazeth power to direct your attention to the spiritual eye, the point where soul meets spirit, where the body becomes transparent and the light of God can pass through. Do this now with me. Close your eyes. Inhale slowly and silently. Speak, Lord. Exhale gently and inwardly. I am listening. Again. Inhale. Speak, Lord. Exhale. I am listening. Feel your own body responding, not with dramatic signs perhaps, but with presence, with calm, with return. That is the first and most constant sign, peace. Everything else flows from it. Each morning, before you rise, before the world claims your attention, give the first moment to this silence. Ask your soul, was I touched in the night? Was a message left in my breath? Did the divine place a fingerprint on my skin while I slept? And then feel, not with the mind, with the soul. If you sense even the faintest glow, honor it. Rise slowly, walk prayerfully, journal the sensation, pray with gratitude, not demand. These small acts open the channel wider. And as you honor what is small, the divine entrusts you with more. There is no part of your being too earthly for the presence of God. There is no inch of your skin that He cannot use as parchment. When the body becomes the temple, the soul no longer needs to search for signs. It simply receives them. So from this day forward, say this sacred vow. I no longer wait for miracles. I notice them. I no longer ask for signs. I respond to them. I no longer separate body from spirit. I offer my whole being as the altar of communion. And let this vow guide your days. Let it make your every sensation sacred, your every breath a prayer, your every awakening an invitation to deeper awareness. God is always speaking. And now, dear one, so are you through your stillness, through your reverence, through your willingness to let the body become what it was always meant to be. The temple where the infinite leaves love notes for the soul.